let's go. All right. So, welcome back to Oral Alchemist. We got a lovely, lovely singer today. Um, who actually, this year? You started
Yes.
this year, but there's
Yes.
a lot more that went into that. But the
Yes.
lovely,
Yeah.
wonderful Miss Yasmine,
Hello. Thank you for having me, CJ.
my pleasure. Real quick, let's talk about just like a real quick primer for your background as an
Yeah.
artist and a person.
Okay. It's it's an interesting one. So I've been singing my whole life, but
Hmm.
like you mentioned, I really just got started releasing music this year. So for the last like 25, 26 years of my life, I have been singing, like coming out of the womb singing. And I say that because like I'm Jamaican and I'm Filipino, and
Hmm.
Filipinos love to sing. Like they really love karaoke. So I just grew up doing karaoke with my family. And then one day, my mom was like, "Oh, like you could kind of sing. Like we should put you in some voice lessons or something." Um, and she put me in voice lessons at like the local music school. I was very grateful that they were able to help me have that. And the funny thing is like I got paired with this teacher. They didn't ask or anything. I don't really know how it worked, but I got paired with this teacher,
Hmm.
and she started teaching me opera. She
Oh.
was like this, yeah, she was this Russian lady, and she'd studied opera, and the technical term for it is the bel canto technique. It's an like, Italian opera technique, and so that's what I learned for like a decade actually. And it was hard because I'd never been exposed to opera in that way before taking those lessons. I didn't start
Hmm.
until I was like 8. So for a long time I was singing opera, and I really struggled with it because I wanted to sing songs that I heard on the radio and songs that I grew up knowing. But if anybody that's watching this has studied opera or listened to opera and wondered, oh man, they do something that's so cool, that when I name that technique, it's because it is very, very different than techniques you would use for other types of popular music.
Hmm.
And a lot of times you're kind of taught in opera that any way of singing that's not the bel canto technique is actually incorrect, which for a long time I really struggled with because like how could that be, right? Like how could
Yeah.
all these artists that I love and have amazing voices be singing this incorrectly? What do you mean? And it's my voice teacher was wonderful. So
Hmm.
I don't mean to say anything about the opera community or bel canto community, but I think anybody who's tried to sing opera and gone to other types of music um, probably has that. It's hard. It's really hard to do. You can do it, but it requires intense training to be able to switch back and forth because you're just using a different method
Yeah.
for your voice. Yeah.
I imagine that's
Um,
very much of a
yeah.
paradigm shift. Hold on, I'm gonna turn my
Yes.
headphones up real quick.
Oh yeah. No worries.
All right. Okay. Wow. Yeah, I did read that in your bio, and now
Yes.
when you
It's.
say it out loud, it's like, yeah, jumping
Mm,
from. So for context, we
yeah.
met like 2 days ago, and then she was like just going crazy at Cole's bar, right?
Thanks.
So I was like going from opera to that, and then like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's more than a hop and a skip.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and I know this is kind of a long-winded way of telling you about my background, but for a long time I really struggled, and then I went to college. I didn't study music actually, so I had that formal music training in a way, but I didn't continue at the collegiate level, and I just kept singing, and I stopped going to my voice lessons because I moved away to go to
Hmm.
school, and I joined the University of Illinois. That's where I went, the University of Illinois Black Chorus, my senior year. And I was like, you know what? This professor, she is amazing. I was like, we're learning some really cool things and just music that I just had not been exposed to growing up. Like the ways of singing is what I mean, because
Yeah.
had studied opera. And so, I did some things here and there in college. I would perform the national anthem at some of our basketball games. But for a long time, I really wasn't doing anything to create my own music or really perform very much. And then once I graduated, it's like there wasn't really a place for me to do that because everybody that I went to school with was mostly, they were all like business majors. So nobody was doing anything creative. Um,
Mm-hmm.
So it was a weird dichotomy of like myself actually being in that space and then having this creative side and nobody else to really share it with. But eventually, and we can talk more about this,
Mm-hmm.
I found more people that wanted to create music kind of by happenstance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think by finding people and building a team and a community of people that really want to create music helped me realize that what it actually takes is collaboration to really make it possible. And so I found a vocal coach actually um, who has experience doing opera and then different types of vocal techniques. And so she was
Mm-hmm.
really able to help me work through it, which is why I now have the perspective that I do to think back to my opera days and think, okay, I think there's just like there's one school of thought, but all types of music and all types of traditions and cultures in which music is a significant part are all correct. And it really helped me lean into my voice and the way that I
Mm-hmm.
want to use it. So that is my
Yeah.
background, a very long-winded answer.
Look, that makes my life easier. So when you found like your initial collaborators, what was that like, and who did you find? Like, what was?
Yeah. Okay, so this is a good one. I love telling this story. So, like I said, I went to the University of Illinois, but I was an econ major, so I did a whole bunch of business stuff. Um, but my freshman year, I took a songwriting class, and it was really fun. And I ended up collaborating with this kid who was really, really great at the piano, and he was also Filipino, so it was kind of cool for us to connect. And we stayed loosely in touch, and he would hit me up every once in a while to do a video or something. Like I don't know, I think at the time he was using, I don't know if he was using Triller. TikTok was not a thing back then. But he was just making videos, and he would every once in a while ask me to jump in. But then after we graduated, we lost touch, but I still followed him on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 2021, I think I saw him post about his band, and they were playing at Reggie's.
Group chat.
And yes, group chat, yes. And they were playing at Reggie's, and I was like, oh, this is dope. That's awesome. I used to go to Reggie's to get burgers all the time.
Hey, there's some good food. That's some good
This,
bar food.
right? I think people kind of low key don't know that, but like it's really good.
The fried pickle.
Yeah, like their stuff is good, and their fries. Now I'm getting hungry. But so I went to go see them, and I really loved what they were doing. It was an all male group, and they had one woman doing some background vocals for them. And so I just texted him, and I was like, hey, that was amazing. Would love to do backgrounds for you, just because I wanted to get involved in music more, and it seemed like the right time. I was going through a lot of personal changes at the time,
Mm-hmm.
so it was like the right neck. It was like the perfect timing for me. And so they invited me to a jam session with them, and then eventually they actually asked me to join the band. And so from there, I kept working with them. We kept performing, and I had forgotten how fun it was to perform. And I don't know, I just like had really found myself again.
Mm-hmm.
And they were already working with this producer who goes by Farley at his studio called Second Street, and we were working with him for a while, and then I kind of brought this idea of doing my own project to him,
Mm-hmm.
Farley, and I've been working with him on my album since. And so just by doing gigs and meeting people, like meeting you at Kohl's,
Mm-hmm.
it's just been really cool to actually um, like kind of like entrench myself in the Chicago music community, because one, it's really welcoming and everybody's really amazing, like really really talented people, and um,
You were working with this producer Farley at Second Street.
yeah, yes, yeah. So I met him through group chat because they were already working with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I met my producer Farley, and I brought my project to him, and from there, he is really really he's like really really good at bringing a lot of elements of your like your artistry together. So he
Mm.
actually found and booked my very first solo gig. He
Mm.
was doing sound at Uncommon Ground, and that was actually my first solo gig without group chat, which was kind of fun. And he's definitely been a really good advocate and supporter. And then just from there, I just kept meeting more and more people. And it's kind of like a snowball effect. The more gigs you do, the more people you meet. Like that's how I met you, just, by doing the gig at Cole's. I think it just kind of like really underscores um, how how much the connections, especially in the Chicago community, are really, really tight and they really matter because, I think Chicago has a really great music community and a lot of really talented people who want to work together and create really dope music. So that's how I started to find my collaborators. So I'm just excited to keep doing it.
So when's your album coming out?
Okay, tentative release date is April.
April.
And now that I'm saying, I know it's a long time.
No, it's right around the corner.
It's right around the corner, and it makes me nervous to say that out loud. So if I renege on that, that's my business.
Public record.
That's my business if I renege on that, okay? But the ideal date is April. But I kind of believe also that the art takes as long as it takes. And I actually watched one of your clips on your Instagram page today that was about the cohesiveness of your message and your project as an artist. And I think that would be the only thing that would make me delay that, because that's what I've been thinking about now, is like how to make sure that it's saying what I want it to say.
Do it right, not twice.
Exactly. And so there are some things that might get cut from this first album, or maybe something that I want to add that I haven't even made yet, and I don't know. But I'm also thinking about how it fits into this broader vision of like, what do I have to say in general, like as a person, and then I am also thinking about like, I actually am kind of thinking about this in different parts of what the next album after that is going to say. So. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts going on up here, but to more directly answer your question, April, ideally.
So what is the process, well, to the extent that you can share, what has been the process of writing for that?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to share. So for me, like I said, I don't have formal training in songwriting or composition or anything like that, but I do have my vocal training and my ears. So I started out writing some of my own songs. Sometimes I start with just like a melody that's in my head, and my primary instrument is my voice, so sometimes I just start with that, but for a lot of the songs on this first album I actually wrote with the guitarist in group chat, Danny McDermott, and he would just kind of send me these cool little, not like a loop, but kind of like a loop, a couple bars of something he was working on, like an acoustic guitar loop or something, and I would just kind of get inspired by it, and we would write something together. And the very first song that I wrote for this album, which is definitely going to be on the album, it's called The Best. It's not out yet, but I remember I was writing it, and I was taking a little lunch break at work, and I went into like one of the phone booths, and I listened to what he sent me, and I started writing it then. Yeah, and sometimes I travel for work.
Those at work sessions.
Yeah,
some heat there.
Honestly, yeah, and. And sometimes I travel for work too, so sometimes I'll get inspired on an airplane. Oddly, a lot of the times I get inspired on airplanes. I don't know why. There's just something about like nothing else to do, and I would just kind of write to some of those. But the very first song that I released, Eyelashes, is also in collaboration with Danny, and it was a melody. The acoustic guitar that you hear in it is something that he'd been playing over and over again for like months. And at our rehearsals and stuff, like in between, guitarists always noodle in between everything.
That's musicians in general.
Yes,
put their acts in front of them. What do you expect them to do?
I think the only people that like are aware of when they're noodling are drummers, because everybody turns and looks at them like, "What are you doing?" But he was noodling on this all the time, and finally I was like, "Okay, what is this?" And I asked him to explain to me what it was about, and without like putting his business out there like that.
Mm-hmm.
He was telling me that it was just kind of like something that he kept coming back to, and he couldn't stop playing this song because it just like made him think about somebody. And I asked him to tell me what like more about that and the experience that he had. And that's actually, so the song is actually not about me, and nothing that I experienced is actually about something my close friend Danny experienced. And he was just kind of telling me about what his feelings were, and that is how I ended up writing it. And he actually called it Eyelashes, but he didn't have any lyrics or any words. He just said it reminded him of like, you know, butterfly kisses, like, you know, when you go like this to somebody with your eyelashes.
Whoa.
Yeah, and that's why the first time I was like, I remember the feeling of your eyelashes against my skin, and it just went from there. We actually wrote it in like 20 minutes, so it was cool.
Look, yeah, that speed will help you out.
Yeah, and it was cool. It was actually the first song that I wrote that like is truly not about me and is about something from somebody else, which is kind of interesting. But I still resonate with it, you know. And obviously, I kind of like still pull from my own emotions and feelings, and also, you know, empathy towards his story that he was telling me. But then we took it with an acoustic and vocals to Farley, my producer, and he was the one who had this idea to go with the beat, the direction of the beat, like the rhythm, which I don't really know how to describe it. I wouldn't say it's like he kind of would describe it as like maybe like a Latin Spanish style type beat, but I really don't know what to call it because it still has elements of R&B.
Mm-hmm.
And
it was very seamlessly produced.
Yeah, he did a really good. Yeah, he did a really really great job. And that's how it was born. So it took basically what I'm trying to say is it took a lot of different people and different ideas to create that first song. And sometimes that's what my process is like. And other times it's as simple as like I just have a melody or I hear a bass line. I'm like, oh, that sounded cool. Like, what could I do with that? And I'm sure all artists have this. You know, they have like a notes app on their phone with like random lyric ideas. Yeah,
500 different things.
Yep. So sometimes I'll just pull from that. I'm like, ooh, you know, that's making me feel this like this today or whatever. Or sometimes if I'm playing with people. I like to do this thing, and I don't know if anybody does this, but I do this. Because again, the voice is my primary instrument. I play the piano, as you can see it behind me, but like more as a songwriting tool. But sometimes I'll tell people like, hey, can you play something that makes you feel like this? Or like imagine like you're sitting on a beach and you have like a cocktail in your hand and you're like watching the sunset, right? I'll actually like kind of like describe what kind of feeling or what kind of visual I have for the song, or just like whatever I want to write about today. And like that's sometimes how I'll try to like work with people to like pull what I want out of them, I guess. So sometimes I do that too.
That's a very open way of like collaborating. And I like how inclusive you are.
Yeah. I do never claim to know everything, and I just surround myself with really really talented people. So I find that I make the best stuff when I work with other people. So
music is not made in a vacuum.
No, and I think that's what really helped me realize that I could create music. And I think, you know, like I said, I took voice lessons growing up, but there was never really, it wasn't really clear to me. Yeah, exactly. It wasn't really clear to me, like, what do I do and how do I do it? Because, like, I sing, I don't know how to use Pro Tools or Ableton. I don't play every instrument. So how do I actually have a career in music? And also, you know, I wasn't exposed to the different parts of a career you can have in music. And so for me, I think, like I said, the collaboration aspect, it was the key unlock for me to actually realizing that like I could pursue this for real.
I got you. That's awesome. So as you said earlier, you're dialing in your artistic direction, and so far, what have you learned about yourself so far in that sense?
Ooh, this is a good question. Okay, I think the very first thing that comes to mind when I think about what have I learned for myself in the sense of like how to shape my direction is, in order for me to let me preface this by saying I think some people can create in like a world where like they're everything feels like chaos in a way, like
Mm-hmm.
up here, you know, you have a lot going on and like you can still just create. For me, I need like some quiet time, like quiet time in here, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
I need to figure out how to relax so that like all the creative ideas can start flowing. Because you know, some of us we got demanding day jobs, we got this, we got you know that, and so I think when we try to carve out time to make sure that we can create, and you know, sometimes ideas just flow,
Mm-hmm.
even when we're just kind of sitting there doing something else. For me, I really realized that like taking time to just kind of have my thoughts and like decompress really brings in the most creative stuff for me. And a lot of the times when I create some like I can like go through periods where I'll be creating like 10 songs in the space of a week. Because I took that week off, and it's so interesting. Yeah, it's so interesting. Um, but you know, I again, like I said earlier, though, I still like wrote the very first song that I wrote for this album in you know a phone booth on my break at work. So it can still happen the other ways too. But I
Mm-hmm.
think the best thing for me is just like allow my whole being to like be invested in the process. And that is one thing I learned about myself. The other thing I learned too is that I really like experimenting with different kinds of sounds and vibes. And part of why I said the release date is tentatively April, and the only thing that could change that is if I change, you know, what I think fits the creative direction or what I want to say, is
Yeah.
because there are a lot of songs, and you, when you saw the show, you know, we advertised it as like a time to cry and be in your feels. And so you didn't hear the last song that I just released, The Right Way, which is super upbeat, very fun, very funky. But like it's kind of like they're very different vibes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just am trying to figure out how to make sure that I am, how do I say this? That I am creating something that you know the people who are listening to me, the people who follow me and like are invested in what I have to say, can also make sure they still relate to.
Mm-hmm.
But what I realize is that like I'm just kind of writing about my life, I guess, and
I mean, else you supposed to do?
right, what else am I supposed to do? And I don't know it's why it's been so hard for me to like really like let that sink in. I'm like, you know what? These things that we all go through in life are not as like isolated as we think, and they're actually probably more universal than we think. And, you know, if I'm going through it, chances are somebody
Mm-hmm.
else has gone through it too. And just because I wrote one song about, like, having a really good time and another song about, you know, being really sad in a situationship, doesn't mean that somebody else can't relate to, the same person can relate to both those things. If I can relate to both, that
Oh
means somebody
yeah.
else can. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Basically, what I'm trying to say is I've learned to, like, let all parts of myself be a part of the music and to let that come out however without trying to like police like oh I need to stick to this or I need to stick to that, because I think as long as I keep myself in it, it's all gonna have be cohesive.
I got you.
Mm-hmm.
That's begs the question. So, if I were just like a rando coming up, first time I see a show or I see your Instagram or hear some
Mm-hmm.
music, like in a like a Spotify playlist or anything,
Yeah.
like that first impression, who do you think? What is your? Let me say it in this way that makes sense. What kind of artist are you building yourself up to be? Like, who are you as an
Ooh,
artist?
that is a really broad, bold, and big question. Who am I as an artist? I am an artist that really just wants to connect and create an experience for people where they can both laugh and cry and dance all within the same like 20 minutes. Because that's kind of I know that sounds crazy, but
So
that's like
manic, depressive, hippie,
yeah, maybe a little bit. Yes,
but this will be
exactly.
fun.
But it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. And and you know because it's like those are all feelings that we can feel at any given moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like what I've learned about like the seasons of life as I'm, you know, navigating my mid 20s is that
Mm-hmm.
like everything has a season, And I just want to be an artist that people can like turn to and say like, okay, cool, like, you know, she understands what I'm going through, because like yesterday was great and today it was not great, but tomorrow might be better, or it might also suck, but we're gonna have a good time anyways.
Um,
Ugh,
so
technology.
as you were saying, um, well, what you said really begs the question: who are you as an artist,
Yeah,
and what kind of artist do you want to be?
the artist that anybody who is where life is lifing can turn to, because when you come to a performance or you listen to my music, in
Mm-hmm.
that same 20 minutes you will laugh, you will cry, you will dance, you might even call your mom, you might think about calling your ex but you won't, okay, all the things, um, because I think that's universal, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, yesterday sucked, right? But today, like, I woke up and I hopped up out of the bed, I turned my swag on, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And tomorrow I gotta go to work again, right? And I think um, it's for anybody, whether or not you're the same age as me, going in your mid 20s, or in your 30s, your 40s, and you're just kind of like navigating through the seasons of life. I just
Mm-hmm.
want my music to be something that people can turn to for every season of life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Look, look, bro. It's like
yeah.
no matter how old you are, you can always enjoy a nice, pretty sky, some good weather.
Exactly,
You a good weather
exactly.
artist.
Yes,
Look.
yes, and a good weather artist, also a set a timer and cry artist. Like all those kinds of things. So that's really what I want to be,
Mm-hmm.
because I think when artists, when we're or creatives in general, when we're defining like who we want to be, what do we want to share, what do we have to say. The truth is, I can only share the things that I've experienced and the
Right.
lessons I've learned, and I'm still learning. And so my audience is just going to grow with me, honestly, because that's the only way I know how to do it. I don't, and so I'm going
I
through it.
mean, the other way to do it is just full of cap. So,
Yeah, and like nobody really knows what they're doing or what's going on, and so I just have to believe that like I am not the only one, right? I'm not the only one who doesn't really know everything, um, and that's just what I want. I want people to be able to feel vulnerable, be able to feel and fully enjoy all the happy moments and joyful moments of life. The good choices that we make, the bad choices that
hmm
we make, reflecting on the things that we've done in our past that we would maybe do differently. Like you might hear me sing about the same topic twice and I'll have a different opinion, right? But like that's because we're growing through it.
hmm
So that is really what it's about. It's kind of like the changes and seasons of your life and like different stages of metamorphosis.
that is beautiful. Glad we had to run it back.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm looking through these questions. Ooh, this is a good one. All right, between your work with group chat, right? Actually, talk
Hmm.
about a bit like the work with group chat. Do you take part in the writing
Yeah.
with that? Yeah,
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 so
yeah.
I
Get
do, I
into
do.
that.
Yeah, okay. So right now, Group Chat has one album out, which I was actually not a part of. When I joined the group, they'd already been formed for like a year-ish, maybe a year and a half.
hmm
And so they were already putting an album out. But the last song that was released, Heartstrings, is the very first song that I wrote for Group Chat. And I wrote that one also on an airplane, actually. On an airplane. Yeah, really weird. People really were having me, like, my seatmate was probably like, what is this girl doing singing to herself out loud on a plane? That's crazy. I would do it quietly, not to be weird or anything. But, so yeah, so with Group Chat, I write, I sing. There's another lead singer as well.
hmm
His name is Justin Jacobs. And it's interesting because Group Chat is really like a rock funk fusion band. It's like funk rock. And I don't know how to define it necessarily, but um, it's its own sort of lane, I suppose. And the process for us is, a lot of the times it's just kind of like a jam session. And so
Mm.
when I wrote that one, it had actually been from a jam session we started in the middle of a gig. And the reason we
Ooh,
started,
the
yeah,
best ones.
yes, but it was because Justin broke the guitar string.
Oh,
Yeah, on his You know what? He had two guitars. He just didn't want. It was a very casual gig. It was like a
Oh,
house party gig.
he just didn't want to move.
He restrung his guitar.
Restrung it. Oh my word! So you restrung
That's
it in the middle of the gig.
Yes, yes. We were all looking at him like, bro, what are you doing? What are you on right now? He really wanted to use that guitar.
Oh man.
Um, and so, because it was a very casual gig, it was a free gig. We did it for somebody's backyard party. It was like
Mhm.
a friend in the band.
Mhm.
And I believe it was in the summer, I think. And people were like, it was in Lakeview, actually, like Wrigleyville, and people were like poured out onto the sidewalk. It was pretty cool, and so people just like stopped and watched,
Mhm.
that like had nothing to do with this house. And um, so obviously the band was like, let's just riff a little bit because we're gonna wait for this man to string up his guitar strings. And like he did it pretty quick. I'm not gonna lie, he didn't do it fast, but they were playing something, and I was like, hey everybody, sorry about that. Sometimes this happens if you're a musician and blah, 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 blah. I was like, Justin broke his guitar strings. Justin broke his guitar strings. And I just started writing the melody actually in front of the audience. And I just was like, I was riffing too.
Oh yeah.
And then it was catchy. And I was like, hey, can somebody record this and send it to me later? um, and they
Yep.
did. They DM'd it to me. I forgot about it. And then I got a DM. And then, hey, this is what you did. And I was like, oh, dope. And so I started writing it from that.
Mhm.
So it actually started as a song we wrote in front of an audience.
That's pretty cool.
It was pretty
Um,
cool. Yeah.
how did it end up? So how did you guys develop it from that point on? Did you just like obviously?
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
say I'm sure you guys didn't just like go with the voice memo. You wanted to
No.
have some more fun with it.
Yes, exactly. So I started writing. I started writing a verse and a chorus on like an airplane, and I was like talking to my friend on FaceTime because I was complaining about this boy, and he was just really irritating me, and um, that's how the first line came out. I was like, watching you sleep peacefully. I just had an epiphany. You just ain't good enough for me, baby. Wake up and leave. Because I wanted him to get out. I was really irritated, and I was like, you could go. Um,
It's a nice way to
so
say it.
yeah, right. It was sweet. I think it was nice. I was like, you can get up and go. So I started singing out loud. I was like, I don't care who's sleeping. I'm gonna write this song right now in front of you because you're irritating me. Um, and then I went back home to Chicago, and I was like, hey guys, I had this song from when we were at that gig, and we got to finish it. So we just started jamming on it together.
Mhm.
And everybody was in the room, and we just started working on it together and developing it. And we ended up writing the bridge together too, because I didn't have that part yet, and it was really fun. So I guess the shorter answer to your question is I started with what we have from that voice memo. I wrote a verse, I wrote a chorus, and I brought it to the group, and then we just finished it together. And then I would just kind of like hum along to the melody. Like the melody, I didn't actually. Some of the lyrics I wrote in our jam session, and then sometimes
Mhm.
I like to like go back later and like think of the lyrics. But some lyrics stay right from that session
Mhm.
because they were just so good, right? But sometimes, this is just kind of part of my process all the time is I'll just hum it out. Sometimes I will have the lyrics already, and I'll just start, all of the lyrics that I want to say inform whatever melody I'm choosing sometimes,
Mhm.
which I don't know how common that is, but it ended up being a really fun process for us all to write, and we all just kind of were like, yeah, this sounds dope.
Oh,
Yeah.
double dope.
Yeah. So full live instrument. So everything for group chat is just like fully live instruments.
Mhm.
And so when we sat down to record it, you do bass and drums first, and then build it up from there. And then I finally laid vocals down, and then I also did the background vocals too. It's so interesting.
Interesting.
I'm veering off from your question now.
It's
Because like
all good.
now,
I just riff. I just
yeah, because now I'm thinking about recording vocals, and that was the first song that I ever recorded in a studio.
Mm.
Like the first time I'd ever actually recorded myself singing, like really recorded myself singing for like putting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so the cool thing was that like Farley, I had gotten to know him over time, and so our sessions are really fun actually, and I really love working with him to produce and record vocals. We communicate very seamlessly,
PB&J.
and yeah, really, really and truly, it's really a good time. And I um, I spent a lot of time um, like comping my vocals and like really going through every single detail of like which take did I, had this type of emotion, and like, oh, you know what, I never thought about, you know putting this kind of feeling or emotion into it, but it came out in this take, so like let's do that, let's do like that word or that line like that and
Mm-hmm.
take that take. Um and the cool thing for me is like I'm a live performer first, because I
Mm-hmm.
said I didn't start making music. I didn't start, being a musician by making music. I started by performing music.
Right.
And so performing music live is very different than having the opportunity to record something again and again and again, to get
Yeah.
exactly what you want.
Yeah.
So I've been learning a lot about how to perform for the booth and how to perform,
Yep.
versus performing for other people. Yeah.
Yep. It's a
Um,
different beast.
it is. It is. And so I've been learning a lot about that. Um, but it's been a lot of fun, and honestly, I really love being able to play with different things and create like a really different texture or feeling in the vocal booth than I would live. And then it gives me free range to really make my live performance feel like something different. And so for Heartstrings, I was still learning how to record. Right, that was my first
Mm-hmm.
time. And so now, as I've gone through and recorded more and more for my own album,
Mm-hmm.
it's been really interesting to just like take the version I have in the studio and transform it. When my song "The Best" comes out, you'll hear that you know in the studio version everything is in the same key, but in a live version I actually do a key change, to kind of create something different.
Ooh.
Yeah, yeah.
Ooh.
So it's just been really fun to do that and like to think about, okay, how do I want this to live indefinitely, like
Mm-hmm.
in perpetuity, because like that's what I want people to come back to. And then, what kind of experience do I want to create when we're in a live setting?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been really fun to do that.
Fantastic. Um, Man, I would love to see you with the band though.
Yes, we're
Like,
working on it. We're working on it. Um,
look, I know it's a lot just getting like people in the same room for like a
mm,
rehearsal.
okay, okay. Yeah, and I'm still learning that too, because I think the cool thing about being in a band where it's like we're all creating this thing together is like we all have our. It's good and it's bad, right? Because every creative person wants to like insert their stuff into the music and into the DNA of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like almost easier when you're already a band and you're creating something as a band, as opposed to like, okay, now I'm this like independent artist, me, Yasmine, and I want to bring people into this music that I've already started to create some of it,
Yeah.
and how to make sure I get people one invested, and then also like how do I transform this? And like, people are looking to me now for all the answers in the direction like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want, Yasmine? And being really clear on like, okay, what is my vision for this live performance? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
kind of set do I want to build? For like for one option versus a set for like maybe a smaller venue, a set for where I'm opening, like I said, like for Cole's, we had advertised it as like a session for crying. So I brought all of my tearjerker songs together,
Mm-hmm.
and left some of the other ones
The bops. You
back
just
in
left the
yeah.
bops and left the and brought the sobs.
Yes, I like that. Left the bobs, brought the sobs. Um, so I think that's one of the things I'm really learning, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of like it's been a stretch for me to like really really step into that. And I think like I have the knowledge and tools because I wrote it, right, but
Mm-hmm.
to really like step into the role of like directing that, and then telling other people like what do I want you to play, which is
Mm-hmm.
interesting. um, But like you said earlier, I really like a collaborative approach, and I want people to bring their own like
You're bringing them
idea.
there for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. I want them to bring their own experiences and feelings into the music and what we're creating. Um, and I don't know, it's just been a really fun journey to have that experience and to just kind of figure it out as I go along.
That's great. Uh, well, we'll do one more question.
Okay.
So what are you working on to add some? You told me about you're just working on like both like your directing and leadership. You know how
Mm-hmm.
to switch between performing for a stage and a booth. But specifically for your writing, how are
Mm-hmm.
you honing your craft there?
Ooh, that's a really, really good question. I'm gonna drink a little water first.
Do what you got to do.
The cold is kicking my butt. It's
Well,
dry because like you have the heat on, and as
hmm
like singers, you have to keep it like really humid. Gotta keep your vocal
you got to
cords,
keep them pipes in
hydrated.
good condition.
Exactly, hydrated. Um, okay, so you were saying like, what do I do to really hone my craft of songwriting?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been trying this thing where like I write something every day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think life can get busy, and I think I used to be in this mindset of like, well, yeah, I'm gonna write when inspiration strikes, but I actually am learning that that's not always the right way to go. Obviously, when inspiration strikes, it strikes, right?
It strikes
But
hard.
exactly, but sometimes constraints can also build a lot of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's kind of like any other thing you want to get really good at. You have to do it and practice it often. And not every single thing you make is gonna be like is gonna make it to the cut, but it might be something that inspires you to do something else. Um, and I think like just doing it every day is what's helpful. Um, the other thing that I do is I just listen to a lot of different types of music, like all different types, which for me is helpful because I think it gives me one, maybe different ideas for how I want the flow of my lyrics to feel or sound to switch things up while still keeping it in my own voice, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
for example, SZA has a very distinct way of, like, a distinct flow. And, somebody like a Cleo Soul has also very distinct way and a distinct flow. Somebody like Victoria Monet has something completely different. And so just like listening and observing to how other people write lyrics and a flow and a melody has really helped me inform, you know, okay, I might like that from this person. Or like, oh, I didn't think about how, they made that rhyme pattern. And it's one I haven't heard before. So maybe I could try that or incorporate that. So that's helpful. And then also just listening to different types of instrumentation and a lot of different genres.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, Group Chat is a funk fusion rock band, and I make pop R&B music. Um, but like I'm able to write both. And I also like allow myself to sometimes write whatever genre like the idea comes out in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I say that because, like I said, not everything is gonna make it. But like I wrote this pop punk song. Oop, I moved my desk. I wrote this pop punk song, and because like I just was, I just really needed to write whatever I needed to write, and it came out like a pop punk song, which was kind of weird. I used to listen to Paramore growing up, and I
Look,
still do.
look. A lot of people, okay, in the black community,
Did we like
they
Paramore?
it was quiet. It's like, oh, you listen to that?
Right,
That Joey Dog show is hot. But then it's like, hey,
right.
well, I didn't listen to no rock. What you mean?
Yeah, right. And like, so I listen to a lot of different genres,
Mm-hmm.
because I let the ideas come out how they want to, even if it doesn't really resonate with the sound that I'm trying to put out there. I'm gonna still write it because I needed to get it out there. Um, yeah, to your point though about what you just said about like black people liking all different types of music, I actually just read this article about Lenny Kravitz and um, because he's a rock star, quite literally a rock star.
Mm-hmm.
And I've listened to I listened to a lot of Lenny Kravitz growing up. My dad actually really loves rock. Like I grew up listening to things like Iron Maiden and like Lenny Kravitz and my dad listened to like Alice in Chains and stuff. He
Mm-hmm.
really and Metallica. But then he would also like put on some Michael Jackson He would put on literally everything, and I think that really helped me get exposed to a lot of different types. I continue to do that now. Like, I just discovered, my producer showed me this band that I never heard, Polyphia. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but they're insanely talented, and it's mostly like instrumentals. There's no, for what I've heard so far, at least, there's no lyrics or words to most of what I listen to. But I guess my point being, I try to take inspiration and learn from all different types of genres of music, because I think that just kind of helps expand your aperture, and like being able to bring different influences of music into your own creativity is really, really helpful. And I love it. So, yeah.
Look.
Yeah. SZA said she listened to Creed. She had just posted about how she loved Creed. And, like, I know, right? And she's like, it was really inspirational for, like, I don't remember what she said, but I'm like, see, everybody, you know, like, you really gotta listen to it all, because you never know what you're gonna learn. And I don't know, I think that's what's been helpful for me. So doing it every day, listen to all different types of music, listen to your favorite artists, and try to understand like why it is that their song makes you feel how it makes you feel, or creates an experience that you're experiencing, and try to think about what about it makes you feel that way, so that you can kind of tap into some of those tools. And I also follow people who talk about their songwriting process, or talk about songwriting in general, like Oral Alchemists. And like what the creative process is like for them.
Fantastic. Well, that was lovely. Once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Showed out. Anyways, besides my inability to speak English, plug yourself, plug your bands, tell people where to find you, book you, work with you, all that.
Yes. So, everybody, again, my name is Yasmine. I like to say, you know, Yasmine, 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 but I'm very, very nice. Hopefully you still think so by the end of this podcast. You can find me on all streaming platforms under Yasmine. It's in all caps, Yasmine. And you can follow me on TikTok and Instagram at The Queen Yazzie G. The Queen, Yazzzyg, and I post a lot about music that I'm listening to, sometimes my songwriting process, also what a day in the life actually looks like as somebody, you know, with a day job, and, you know, family, friends, all this stuff, and, you know, trying to make music and live out their passions, which I think a lot of us can relate to, and just kind of about the experiences that I'm going through that inform the songs that I'm creating. And so if you're down for that, and you're along on that journey, and, you know, you want somebody to go through and walk through the seasons of life with you, I'm your girl. So please check me out. If you want to book me, you can email me at yasminemusicbusiness@gmail.com, and you can reach out to me on Instagram as well. So thank you, CJ.
My pleasure. When's your next single coming out?
Tentatively maybe before the end of this year. I haven't decided on a release date yet.
Okay, tap in with her. Pause.
Yes.
Tap in with her, and don't let her catch you lacking on this single.